I saw him go for it, so I thought for sure.
I know, I'm not kidding. It's not the truth. Yeah, no,
My original college is a ballerina. It's about to come through. My son was listening.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Cox, Battalion Chief and Information Officer with CAL FIRE. Welcome to the CARR press conference. Just a few things. Firstly, for all cameras here, please include the sign language interpreters in all of your shots. Secondly, please silence any cell phones right now and take any conversations outside if possible. And thirdly, we will have a moment for question and answers after the formal speakers. With that, I'll turn it over to the Sheriff.
Good morning, Tom Basenko, Shasta County Sheriff, Director of Emergency Services for Region 3. I'd like to welcome Madam Secretary Nielsen to this incident. Thank you very much for the visit. We've had a little bit of an update. We've decreased our law enforcement mutual aid services. We've nearly repopulated most of the areas affected by the fire. There's still some remaining. And then we had some fires pop up in the eastern county and also in the northern part of the county that added to some of the fire activity. The law enforcement mutual aid folks and my staff did a great job of keeping our neighborhood safe and made a few arrests as a result of people coming into evacuation areas and also looting. Early on, we've already started the recovery process, and we've been assisted by the Office of Emergency Services from the state and from FEMA. We've established a local assistance center, and that is now combined with the Disaster Recovery Center, and that's located at the old Kmart building at 2685 Hilltop Drive. There's a number of services there, both from state, local, and federal. FEMA is there as well, and volunteer services and nonprofits to assist the victims of the fire in this recovery effort and removal of debris. This allows a streamlined recovery process and centralized location for services, and also many of the insurance companies are there with their mobile offices to assist their customers as well. As I said earlier, the reentry and repopulation of the majority of the areas in the county has been completed. We've worked and stressed working closely with our fire partners and the utility partners. Safety is first and foremost, not only for the folks working in those areas, but for the citizens returning to those areas. Volunteer groups are coordinating with the Salvation Army, and those include some are the Samaritan's Purse, a faith-based organization operating out of Reading Christian Fellowship, Churches for Christ on Alta Mesa, and Anderson Church of Christ, and then Team Rubicon, which is formed by veterans and assists also in the debris cleanup and some of the recovery for them. But I'm very proud of the men and women of law enforcement that have assisted us during this difficult and disastrous time. And also like to thank the California National Guard for their assistance as well, and resource support and other assistance they offered as well. Their quick action of evacuations early on led to saving lives. This time I'd like to turn it over to Cal Fire Chief Ken Pimlott.
Thank you, Sheriff. So it's been almost 3 weeks here in Shasta County with the CARR fire, and amazing progress has been made against some very challenging fire and weather conditions. This morning, the fire is 181,496 acres, but 51% contained. A lot of work has gone on to make that happen. But we continue to be in critical fire weather conditions throughout California. A red flag fire weather warning continues to be in place for much of Northern California through late Saturday night. This means continued very dry temperatures, very dry conditions, high temperatures, and high winds. We, as the sheriff said, had additional new fires start yesterday here in Shasta County, as well as around the rest of California. As we speak, there are 30,000 firefighters deployed to fires throughout the western United States. 13,500 of those are deployed right here in California. We've burned over 671,000 acres just since this fire siege began several weeks ago. So we continue to move resources. We continue to prepare for the next events. We have resources from all over the country helping us here in California. We also have resources, firefighters from Australia and New Zealand. We are working very close with our partners at the California National Guard, but also federal military assets. There will be additional crews coming into California within the coming week. Vigilance, vigilance, vigilance is what we're saying. We are nearly the middle of fire season. We have a long way to go. We have critically dry conditions. Firefighters are out there every day working to protect everyone in the state. We need everyone in the state to have a heads up how critical conditions are. Pay close attention, follow websites, follow social media, pay very critical, close attention to information that's flowing out, not only on existing incidents, but the potential for new existence with this kind of weather. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Director of the California Office of Emergency Services, Mark Ghilarducci.
Thanks, Chief Pimlott. Well, you've heard it from both Sheriff Pasenko and Chief Pimlott. We are still in this very significant fight, and this continues to be an all-hands-on-deck, one team, one fight effort, local, state, federal, private, non-governmental, everyone coming together, not just here, but throughout the state. Concurrently, while the fire activity is still being dealt with, we are not waiting. We are aggressively working to begin the recovery process here on the CARR fire in the city of Reading. By next Tuesday, we will have Department of Toxic Substance Control units, these are hazmat units, in Reading and beginning the process of removing household hazardous waste from the various properties. And following that effort, and we clean those properties up, our plan is by no later than the end of August, 1st of September, to actually have the debris clearance teams on the ground and begin the process of clearing each of these properties so that we can get the rebuilding going, get people's lives back up online. In that effort to do that, even from the beginning of the fire start, we have partnered very closely with our partners at FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security. They have been with us every step of the way, whether providing us special fire management assistance grants or direct federal assistance for equipment and resources, and ultimately, at the request of the governor, the president declaring a major disaster for the CARR fire. That has been exceptional support and resources, and we're very appreciative of that. We'll continue to work together in a collaborative effort. The sheriff mentioned the Local Assistance Center, which will continue to be open, and those programs will continue to expand throughout the region, and we'll continue to make sure that all of you get access to all of the eligible programs that could help you in your individual need. So I'm particularly appreciative today, Secretary Nielsen, Department of Homeland Security, here on the ground, seeing the fire damage firsthand, meeting with the responders, and getting a good context as to the complexity of this event and the events that are facing California. So with that, it is really an honor and a privilege to introduce the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. Secretary.
Well, good afternoon, and I want to thank everyone here. This is an important opportunity for the folks behind me to give you an update, and I'd like to spend a few minutes talking to the citizens on ways they can prepare. There are too many people to thank, but I do want to, of course, thank California Fire, California OES, National Guard. I've got some FEMA colleagues behind me. We've got local, state, federal officials. As you can see, as has been mentioned, this truly is one team, one fight. So we're all here together to support the communities, both as we continue to respond as well as we begin the recovery. So thank you for everyone joining here today. I did have the opportunity today to survey some of the damage caused by this devastating CARR wildfire. We saw in particular where the fire tornado went through. You know, this is unprecedented. This tornado was 2 miles long, half a mile wide. I understand it clocked in at about 143 miles per hour and about 2,700 degrees. This was a hot and fast-moving storm of fire. So it shows us that as we continue to see the effects of weather, the effects of climate and the environment, we need to continue to prepare for additional hazards. The scenes are truly heartbreaking. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Homes reduced to piles of ash, fences replaced by caution tape, scorched vehicles in the driveways. It really looks like a scene, unfortunately, out of a devastating adventure movie. But for many families here in this area of California and other parts of California, this is a reality. So I wanted to say my thoughts and prayers will continue to be with the victims, their families, victims' families, and with the survivors. And certainly I want to thank, as always, and take the opportunity to make sure I do so, to thank all the first responders here, firefighters, police alike, and all those supporting the firefighting efforts from throughout the nation, and as was mentioned, from other nations as well. Past few weeks have been incredibly challenging, both personally and professionally, for some of the first responders. Just to give you one example, unfortunately this was certainly true for Chief Moore, who I just had some time with to spend talking to him about what he personally experienced as his home and that of his family was devastated. But as he is continuing to survive this, he is continuing to go to work and continuing to support the community. And I think that is what I'm always humbled by when I come to California, to see how neighbors continue to help neighbors. It was amazing to see piles of ash where a house used to stand, and within that, out of the ash, signs thanking first responders. The community clearly could not be more proud and more thankful of all the efforts at firefighting, response, and recovery. So I want to thank all of the folks here today. I want to thank the men and women of FEMA, our partners in California. And I wanted to just mention, I met with Governor Brown yesterday. Top of his agenda and mine are to find ways that we can better model this type of a hazard, and we can be even better prepared going forward. We really need to change all of our assistance programs so that we can get the assistance out ahead of the hazard and disaster to help communities be prepared and to mitigate. On Sunday, as was mentioned, President Trump approved a major disaster declaration for California, ordered federal assistance to supplement state, tribal, and local recovery efforts. I want to thank him for taking that action in support of all those affected by the CARR fire. We at DHS and FEMA will be here and continue to support our colleagues and the men and women of the local area. While the full force of the federal government continues to support, I do want to spend just a few minutes talking about what we can do as citizens to prepare. It's truly not just a job reserved for someone who sits in a desk in a government building in DC, and it's not just the job of the brave men and women who respond every day when the hazards occur. So in times of disaster, whether it's a storm that has been gaining strength for weeks or a wildfire that began overnight, emergency alerts are truly the most valuable resource. So first, I'd like to ask citizens, please do sign up for your community's warning system so that you're aware of the latest developments and notifications. For wildfires, as you know, early evacuation is key to protecting yourself and your family. Listen to local authorities, follow their instructions about evacuations, but please don't wait until there's a mandatory evacuation. Start thinking ahead of time how you're going to get out of your neighborhood or town. What if the roads are blocked? What if trees are down? What if your car is out of gas? This is the type of question and answer that we can all do as citizens to make sure we're prepared. So think about if you'll be relocating for an extended period of time, where will you stay? Do you have family nearby? Would you be accessing a shelter? And if so, do you know where they are? But beyond evacuating, it's important to consider how you'll communicate with your loved ones. We always all assume that our phones will work. Sometimes they do. Sometimes there are so many of us trying to use the phone that there's congestion on the system. So please think ahead of time how you'll communicate with your family, how you'll find them, and where you'll meet. Create a plan. And this is the important part, practice. Once you have that plan, whether it's evacuation or how to communicate with your families, practice and make sure the muscle memory is there so that you all know what to do in the time of a disaster. Keep extra water. You hear a lot about this, but it's important. Water, non-perishable food items, and a battery-powered radio. These can be the difference between a life-saving act and a truly difficult disaster. Make sure you have fire extinguishers in your home and that each family knows where they are and how to use them. Expect them periodically. I know I myself from time to time have to replace them. That's what you do. They don't last forever. Make sure that they in fact are ready in case you need to use them. Also look at your insurance policy. I'm the first to say that insurance policies can be quite difficult to understand, but now is the time to look at it, to understand it, ask the questions, know what's covered, know what's not, and know where you will need additional assistance. You might consider photographing or videotaping your belongings in your house so that you have a very good catalog of what you have in case you need to know that during a disaster. And last but not least, spread the word. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to your coworkers about steps that they can take and you can take together to make sure that your communities and families are prepared. The task I know can seem intimidating. We at FEMA are here to help. I encourage everyone to visit ready.gov to learn more. And certainly with respect to California, there are so many resources that the state and local communities provide. One is www.readyforwildfire.org. You will find some wonderful resources there. You can also download the FEMA app. It has, among other things, a customizable checklist of emergency supplies, maps, other things you would need. So I want to close by thanking all of the dedicated federal, state, and local first responders who are working very hard to help communities continue to respond and to begin recovery. And make no mistake, the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA will continue to support our partners throughout the response and recovery efforts. I encourage families around the nation to begin to prepare now for whatever the threat of tomorrow might be. And I want to thank the heroes who continue to respond as I stand here. I also want to thank the press who's here. You do play an extraordinarily important job, important role when we have these types of disasters and getting the word out, making sure that the communities understand how the fire in this case is acting, where it's moving, what they need to do. So I thank you for your role as well. And with that, I think we'd like to take a few questions if there are any. Yes, sir.
It's Miguel Cano with Univision. I have a question. For undocumented people that lost property in the fire, should they be afraid to go ask for assistance, federal assistance?
No, they should not. We are here to help. We have various programs, and I believe there's even some instructions on the FEMA website for just that occasion. So this was a situation, unfortunately, we had last year as well, and we worked through it. We'll always work through it to make sure people get the assistance that they need. Yes, sir.
The president, in the wake of the fires, has been critical of California's water policies, suggesting that contributed or has been contributing to these fires. You've been talking to experts behind you. To that point, what have they told you?
What they've told, actually, what we talked a lot about is how well mutual aid works. It's quite an amazing system that California really is the best in class. What we will do at the federal level, in the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA, is we will respond to the local needs. What we try to do is respond to them. So it's locally managed, and I think that's very important. So as they ask us for whatever it is they need, we, in conjunction with our partners, will be there. Secretaries Perdue and Zinke are also coming out early next week. As you know, at the federal level, we have quite a few departments that are involved in this. So I think what's important is to understand the local needs and be able to make sure we're supporting and responding. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of local needs, can you talk about getting the assistance before the disaster? How can you facilitate that? My colleague dug up some numbers from FEMA, said that Shasta County got $56,000 since 1995 for these mitigation efforts. How do you?
Yeah, so I might ask Bob Fenton or Dan Kaniewski if they have some figures. But I think what this shows is, we do fire management assistance grants, as you know. But the hazard mitigation program is interesting because the grant dollars are given after the hazard. And so what we're really working hard, and this was one of the things I talked to the governor about, is how do we change the way in which we provide assistance so that we can provide it on the front end, not during and after. During and after will always be important, but the more we can push the resources on the front end to help state and locals prepare, I think is the better way to save lives and property. But Bob or Dan, do you want to add anything to this particular area? Is that?
A follow-up. Does the major declaration for the CARR fire, major disaster declaration, could that be expanded to Mendocino just because there were fewer structures and homes damaged, destroyed there?
So we do it, as you know, we respond to the governor's request when he asks for disasters. Depending on the type of assistance, the disaster request is usually by county. In this case, Shasta County obviously was granted the declaration. But the fires right now are separate. But Bob, did you want to speak any more just to the process?
Yeah, we just finished assessments down in Lake, and taking that information, the governor made a request for 4 fires, I believe, in his request. The president came back the same day, made the request on the most active fire that day with the most damage, which is the fire here in Shasta and Redding. We've just been able to get into the other fires and do those assessments. So we will provide that information for a determination here on that.
So we're still waiting?
Yeah, we're in the process of pushing the information. In some areas we still can't get in and see the extent. We we have to not only see the damage extent, but also be able to talk to individuals, understand insurance and those kind of things, to see what the needs are.
And actually, that's just to add, it's something else we talked about earlier was the help of the National Guard, which I might not have mentioned earlier, California National Guard. Through drones and other technology, we will be able to much more quickly assess damage, which I think will be very important to make sure that that assistance flows. Yes, sir.
What's the scope of material and economic assistance that FEMA will provide for the coming housing crisis, in particular for the many uninsured?
Yes, so our assistance comes in 3 forms. First, individual assistance for those who have been impacted, homes destroyed, primarily primary homeowners and renters, uninsured. and we will provide assistance to them in the form of grants or rental assistance to help with repairs or potential parts of to contribute to the cost for replacement of their home. In some cases, we may provide temporary housing in the form of travel trailers, mobile homes, depending on the rental stock available in the area. We're working with the state and local government to determine the best housing plan. Plus, we'll contribute 75% of the costs for all the debris removal, all the firefighting costs, and restoration of publicly owned infrastructure. 20% of all the costs that I just spoke to will be put aside for mitigation to help prevent damages like this in the future, to build back stronger, to make things more resilient, and maybe increasing green space in areas that have urban interface, those kind of things.
Yes. How soon can people expect to see housing assistance? Because there's a lot of people here who don't really have anywhere to go.
So right now we are, as people register, and I should say if you need to register, 2 ways to register: 1-800-621-FEMA. That's 1-800-621-3362. You can also go to disasterassistance.gov. I recommend you register first and then go visit the Disaster Recovery Center at the Kmart on Hilltop Drive at the address the sheriff gave. As quick as you register, we will send inspectors out to the field. Most areas are accessible, and our inspectors can do inspections fairly quickly. Once we do the inspection, we turn around and provide assistance in the form of rental assistance if there's rental space available. If there's not sufficient rental space, then we will look at bringing in mobile homes or travel trailers to the area if they can be put on someone's property or we have to find a place to put them. That can happen fairly quickly as we have a number of units left over from last year's fires that are being made available to move up in this area.
Could you talk,
Please, go ahead.
could you talk a little bit about lessons learned from the fires in Sonoma, Napa, and North Bay in terms of cleaning up all the toxic stuff that ends up in the ashes when a neighborhood burns? I imagine there's some things you might do differently.
Well, the events in Sonoma and Napa really were the ultimate and catastrophic loss. I mean, the amount of debris we saw in that incident, we didn't see since probably the 1906 earthquake. So the scale and scope required some very significant actions. We went and sought assistance from the federal government and brought in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to accelerate that process and try to meet the metrics that we had put in place for rapid cleanup. This case here is, while certainly a number of homes, still within the capabilities of the state, and the federal government will be supporting us in that effort, but we will be using state contractors and state assets in this particular case to go in and do the debris clearance and cleanup. And so that may be a little bit of a difference of people who used to see the Army Corps of Engineers before doing it. Now they're seeing the state of California. Generally, the state has a lot of assets, and if we can do it under the state flag, then we will do that. And if we couldn't, then we would certainly turn to our federal partners. They are supporting us with funding and other technical assistance as necessary through the process. And I also may want to just do on a follow-up on the issue of housing. We are. This is why it's so important to go into the local assistance center and get an assessment. We've been working closely. There's really either people who have had loss either have been in shelters or have been into a hotel or motel or with friends. At this point, we're constantly assessing for immediate needs and being able to address people who have that interim sheltering need. And as Bob mentioned, we've got already staged in Sacramento and now looking for staging here a number of mobile home units and travel trailers that are really immediately available. That's a huge step forward because typically that material either has to be procured or it has to come from another state. And so we're hoping that we're going to leverage those assets in a very timely way. Once we get a good assessment of what people's needs are and what they're interested in doing, that housing program will go into effect.
Is that a lesson learned for the new normal, or
Well, we learned a lot. I mean, I think that on the debris side, we really learned about the fact that the speed at which we could get the toxic materials cleared up and get started on the debris operation, and the importance of making sure that the community is informed and knowledgeable about how that process works is really a key lesson from last year, because it is a little bit of a daunting visual to have all this equipment show up on your property and understand what they're going to take and not going to take. And also making sure that the public knows that we will give them time and even assistance as necessary to sift through their materials prior to any debris clearance being taken out. We want to make sure that any heirlooms or personal items or things that survive the fire, we can get those for each individual before anything gets taken off.
Is having the trailers in Sacramento a new thing?
Well, typically on the travel trailers program, they're not necessarily staged, but the way the program works is working with FEMA, we can go up and down the state and procure right off the lot travel trailers. So in essence, those trailers exist throughout the state. The larger mobile home units are staged in, I think, Texas and a few other states where FEMA has those. Bob can probably speak to that. And then we would need to bring those in. It just so happens we had some extra here from last year's fires, and it just gives us a step forward on those.
We have time for one more question. So one more question.
For Bob, can I ask what are the programs undocumented people can use to recover their houses if they lost anything?
Yeah. So undocumented individuals should just apply to the FEMA registration number I gave you. You could go visit the Disaster Recovery Center, and we'll walk you through not only the programs that FEMA has available, but other programs that you have available. And it's going to depend on your specific case, so it's best to go ahead and apply and then work one-on-one with one of our case managers. There'll be more programs than FEMA that they'll be able to access them.
And again, they shouldn't be concerned to put their names and all their information.
Yeah, let me be clear. We have specially trained individuals in the local assistance center. We've been working with non-governmental organizations throughout the area to be able to provide interface, Spanish-speaking or other language speakers. We're putting materials in different languages to ensure. We want people to feel comfortable enough to come in and you can start with meeting with the state personnel and or local, begin to explain your situation, and the programs that apply will apply. If they don't apply, we're working with NGOs and other programs, faith-based organizations, to help those individuals.
The people I've asked, they're afraid of ICE.
Yeah.
So that'll end the formal question portion of this.
Yeah, I don't think there's look, ICE is not in the shelters, and we want to make sure that people understand that that is not a place that we're going to be getting information out, and we're not going to be sharing that with those authorities. So, the key thing is to come to the shelter and work with us on that.
Can you speak to when these travel trailers are going to show up and like where they're going to be, these mobile homes?
As we work with individuals through the case management, we will bring them. It's going to depend on whether their existing lot has water, power, and sewer that's available to hook up, whether it will fit on there, why they reconstruct. There's a lot of factors in that. The key is that we have a little less than 100 mobile homes here, and as you heard Mark say, that we can purchase travel trailers right off the lot, which is pretty quick. So what we need to do is, it starts with people registering. Register right now. It allows us to send an inspector out to understand your situation. We're going to try to get you into rental assistance first, and try to get you some help to get into some type of rental property. If that's not available, then we'll look at other options such as mobile homes or travel trailers.
And real quick, you said 75% of the funding FEMA will provide for debris.
Minimum 75%.
Where's the other 25% going to come from?
It's a combination between state and local. The state of California matches with local government the 25%. I think you do it on the 75-25% level. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We do have quite a few information officers in the room for all of the detailed questions I know you may still have. Just for some final closing comments, we do have Congressman LaMalfa.
Thank you. As a federal representative for this area, I'm very, very grateful for the immediate attention by Secretary Nielsen being with us here today in order to help through this crisis. In the coming weeks, as the fire is extinguished more and more, indeed we'll have that coming to the surface, what people are going to need in order to be restored to what will hopefully be a normal life, whether it's returning to where they were burned out or a new location, new opportunities. We know FEMA's going to be there, and we're establishing those ties now so that we when we get those questions in my office and our FEMA or our other locals will be able to all work together to get people quickly as possible back into their permanent homes, but with that temporary assistance they need. So I'm indeed very grateful for as soon as our governor makes the declaration, administration has come through with the emergency declarations. And so Secretary Nielsen being here today shows that dedication. And then this coming Monday, to the gentleman's question about water and forest management, yes, they are tied together. With unmanaged forests use much more water that does not get to our waterways, but that's going to be when Secretary Perdue and Zinke are here. We'll be talking about that and what we're doing in the future. So with that, I'm very grateful again to those secretaries coming this week and the attention that's being paid to rural California and these issues and these challenges that we have that the administration is showing. So I'm very proud of how this community's come together, right down to people helping feed each other and clothe each other. It really shows what a tight-knit place we have, and a special place here in Northern California. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the press conference. Thank you for your time.